Hello and welcome to tonight's edition of Daily Records Hotline Live with our friends from NordVPN. By the way, if you're interested, there's a discount for you if you click on the comments or whatever it is under that thing. And I'm joined by Scott McDermott once again, Scotty. And the bad news is that Daniel he's disappeared. He's done one again, hasn't he?
What's happened to him? What's the latest?
Well, he's actually... just to keep everybody up to date, he's had to go and get his paperwork, visas, etc. for the World Cup, and he's had a bit of a nightmare down in London today. I don't think he's cut out for travelling the big cities and all this, Scott.
No.
I think we're going to have to babysit him through this World Cup.
Maybe it's a bad idea. Somebody like that travelling with us, experienced travellers, Jacko. You know what I mean? I don't know if he's going to cut it.
He's in for an eye-opener on this trip, boy, I tell you that. Right, so we've got a lot to get through tonight, Scott. I know that you were down seeing Rangers captain James Tavernier today, and touch on that. I've actually got a bit of breaking news, about potential interest in Manny Fernandez, which I'd like to get your opinion on as well. One or two bits and bobs there. We've also caught up with the boys from the Daily Record Celtic blog. I think it's Mick Gannon and Ryan. And they're floating the idea now, I believe, which I've yet to see it, but they're talking about Celtic going for the double, which probably wouldn't have seemed like a very realistic prospect just even a few days ago. I don't know anymore, Scott, with how this season's going. Maybe it is. So we'll get round to that, and also start looking forward to the kind of return of the top flight again, because this is us now. We're at the tickly bit. So we'll start, Scott. James Tavernier. Let's start there. He obviously doing a bit of media today, and he's confirmed that he's not got a contract offer on the table. What do you think? Does this feel like a kind of time for a natural partner ways?
Well, it's interesting, Jacko. I mean, because you sit down with James Tavernier the other day, and obviously, the main thing is talking about the title race. Obviously, 5 games to go. Rangers, try to become champions, unlikely champions, given the start they had to the season. It's going to be an epic run-in, and he's a skipper, obviously. But it's like the elephant in the room is the fact that he might only have 5 games left as a Rangers player. Might only have 2 games left at Ibrox. So it's impossible to get away for this contract situation. And it's people on the outside probably find it strange. Listen, we probably find it a bit strange as well. I mean, he's absolutely adamant that he's barely given it a thought. He's no concentrating on that at all.
They always say that, don't they?
Yeah, he only deals with the short term. He's not thinking about it, and he'll eventually sit down with his family and stuff. Look, first of all, you need to say, I mean, whatever happens, Tavernier's been an unbelievable servant to Rangers. We've said that many times. I mean, 11 years he's been there. Of course, he's still won more trophies. No, he'll admit that himself. But in terms of the service he's given Rangers and the numbers, he's been an unbelievable...
Can't win those trophies on his own, Scott. He's been part of some fairly poor teams along the way, hasn't he?
Exactly. But... Listen, I don't know what you think. My gut feeling on it is that he probably will go at the end of the season. And I'll tell you why. I think if Rangers were really keen on keeping James Tavernier there, I think this would have been done and dusted by now, and a new deal would have been agreed. I've been in press conferences, with Danny Rowe, and we've asked specifically about Tavernier and contract, and sometimes you just get a vibe, you just get a feel for a manager as to whether you think that's going to happen or not. And as much as he's always praised Tavernier for his attitude and his commitment and whatever else, I've just never get that feeling for Rowe that he sees him as a massive player for Rangers moving forward. And look, even currently, he's not even
he's not a guaranteed first pick anymore, is he?
He's not guaranteed. And listen, he gives Rangers certain things, certain qualities. But if Dujon Sterling's fit, then he's probably first choice at right back. Now, he's got to prove his fitness. I mean, he's another one who's he's got a contract at Rangers, but in terms of looking ahead to the next couple of seasons, as a right back, Sterling's got a lot to prove as well, mostly to do with fitness. And listen, if Tavernier does go, we've said it on here a lot, it might be one of those. I think I mentioned it with Callum McGregor the other night. He'll definitely probably be one of those guys that goes, and you probably don't realise how good he actually is until he's not there anymore. So listen, it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out. But my gut feeling is, you said at the top there, it feels like a natural partner of the ways at the end of this season. And I know whether they win the title or not, I can see him probably finishing up. Where he'll go, I'm not sure. Does he go down to England? Obviously, he's got family and that down there. Does he go for a payday to America or Saudi? I'm sure Tavernier will have offers on the table even now, because he's been free to speak to clubs since January. So it'll be interesting.
What happened to his testimonial?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, he's not had one. There's been barely a mention of it. And again, I think that's something, if he does go, Jack, I could see them announcing at the end of the season that he's leaving, and then maybe having a game, dare I say it, against Leeds, his boyhood club, who he's obviously got an affinity with. Rangers have now got a connection, the 49ers and Prague. And it would seem like a very logical thing to do. Get him one last game at Ibrox against his boyhood club, and he gets a chance to say his kind of big farewell. And I think if that's done, look, he's had a lot of criticism, Tavernier, over the years, as you know. But I think if that's done properly, the way he leaves, the kind of final game, testimonial, whatever, I think he'll get a right good send off. And I think it probably is only in a few years' time, when you look back at the numbers, the goals and assists, leading his team to a European final, and the role that he had in that run to Seville. Under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, you'll probably realise then just how good Tavernier is.
I mean, I think Marzuno said there in the comments, the amount of goals and assists that he's weighed in with over the years. I mean, the actual numbers behind James Tavernier, regardless of what anyone might think of him, defensively, he's got lapses in him. Yep, we know that. But his contribution and the numbers from right back that has been incredible. And I think you're right, Scott. I think the problem is he took on a captaincy. I'm not sure he was ready for the captaincy. If you remember the circumstances around the armband at that point in time, it was Lee Wallace and Kenny Miller, wasn't it? That were really, the sort of leaders in that dressing room.
Yeah, before that, yeah.
And then they ran into issues, obviously, with the club, and there was all sorts of accusations flying about. And at that point, that was when Tavernier became captain, and he's been captain for a long time. But I think he gets a hard time because he's been wearing the armband throughout this protracted period when Rangers really haven't been winning much at all. What is it, 3 trophies?
He's won. That's what he's won. He's won each of the domestic honours, and obviously got them to help get them to Seville. He's in the Hall of Fame already, so the club have recognised him in that way. Look, he'll always get criticism, Jack. I've been critical of him before as well, as you say, defensively, goals he's lost. There's been accusations of kind of weak mentality. I'm going back a good few years now. Don't know if you remember the kind of infamous incident when he did his programme notes in a game against Hamilton, where he basically kind of said, like, I can't remember.
Dealing with pressure.
Aye, I mean, word for word. I can't remember word for word, but it was basically kind of saying, like, getting beat happens. It's just part of the game. But you can't really say that as Rangers captain. So there has been accusations and flack along the way, but I just think overall, you're right about the goals in that, and you only realise. I watched a kind of highlights reel recently of Tavernier's goals for Rangers, and obviously you forget a lot of them, but the standard of goals and the amount of goals he scored for right back, just staggering. I mean, honestly, staggering. And look, I actually said at the start of this season, and I don't mind repeating it, when Russell Martin came in, I thought it was probably then the right time. If Russell Martin is really going to start again at Rangers and kind of revolutionise the place and
clean
slate,
yeah.
I thought it was probably time for him. Either to let James Tavernier go, which would have probably had to happen if he was going to change the captaincy. But I felt it was just the right time for Rangers to have a new leader and a new captain. And that's not a slight on Tavernier. Just he's been through so much, taken so much on his shoulders. Played in some poor teams, had some really bad defeats in Old Firm games and cup ties and stuff like that. For me, Rangers needed a kind of a fresh start under Russell Martin, but he didn't. Rightly or wrongly, he stuck with Tavernier as captain and as his right back. It obviously didn't pan out the way he hoped, and here we are now. To be fair to Tavernier, he's stuck at it as he always does. He's still a big player for them, but not first choice at right back. But certainly at the end of this season, I think it's probably the right time for him to move on. But I mean, what a servant he's been.
Yeah, I agreed, and I do think the sort of cumulative scar tissue is probably something that he's carried, and it's been a heavy weight on him. I think as well that Rangers have been this, and maybe he's unfortunately become the poster boy for this period in Rangers history where they just keep coming up a little bit short. So that there would actually be a nice symmetry for him on a personal level if he could lead Rangers to the title this season, and then walk away from it all. I think that would be almost like a personal vindication, wouldn't it?
What a way to go that would be from to go and lift that trophy. As I say, should have won. He'll feel he should have won more trophies. Even the season they won the title under Steven Gerrard. They were knocked out of both cups by St Johnstone and St Mirren, if you remember that season. I mean, those two, the way Rangers played that season, they should have been gimme trophies for them. To go and kind of get his hands on more silverware, and it didn't happen. So there's been lots of disappointments, but in terms of a signing, what was it, 250 grand for Wigan? Mark Warburton paid for him, something like that.
Pound for pound, it'll be one of the best signings, eh?
Incredible. And that season, just come back to the Seville season, getting to Europa final. His form that year, I mean, he goes far as saying he was one of the best fullbacks in Europe that season in terms of his return.
And that's when Rangers should have sold him, Scott.
I think you're right. I think you're probably right.
And they had Nathan Patterson at the time, and that was the I keep coming back to it. They talk about the player trading model. That is your player trading model right there. You've got the best right back in the Europa League on your hands, and he's at the peak of his powers, and you've got Nathan Patterson ready to step in and deputise. That's what Celtic did with Kieran Tierney. They got him into the team, nice and young, and he built up all that experience, and then goes to Arsenal for 25 million. And Rangers should have taken a leaf out of Celtic's book. Now, funnily enough, Scott, that leads me on to my next point. I said at the top of the show, I just got confirmation before we came on air from a pal of mine over in Holland that Manny Fernandez is one of 6 central defenders on a list of targets that Feyenoord are monitoring. It doesn't really come as a major surprise because John McGlynn sort of let the cat out the bag a little bit in terms of scouts at the Falkirk Rangers game the other week. And but I'm told my people in Holland are think that there's a bit in this. There is some serious interest. If that's the case, and we talk about again the player trading model, what do Rangers do if people start bidding for Fernandez this summer?
It's tough. It's tough, isn't it? I think it's always tough when it's only been a year. Do you know what I mean? See if it's 2 or 3 years of progression and development, and then the big bid comes in, the big offer comes in. I think it's easier. That's then seen as the natural thing to do. You cash in at that point, but it's always hard. I think when it's only been a year. I think when it only has been a year, it then depends just how big the bid is, how big the offer is. Is it something that Rangers just can't afford to turn down? And
what are we talking? What much did they pay? 3.5?
Aye, something like that. Aye, 3.5 million. Might have even been less than that, Jack. Or might have been 2.5, 3 million for Peterborough. And remember, Peterborough, I did a piece with Barry Fry that long ago, and you know what Barry Fry's like. I mean, in terms of add-ons, Barry will have everything included in that, in terms of a heavy kind of sell on as well. So Rangers would need to think about that. It would need to be a really big bid. I mean, I don't know what you're talking, between 15 and 20 million quid to make them really, really think about it, really consider
Get
it.
them to the table.
Cashing in on the, buying cheap and selling for a big profit. If it was something like that, they'd need to seriously think about it. But I suppose the flip side is, I say, it's only been a year.
And he's not had a full season, because the first part of the season he wasn't playing. So
yeah, you're right.
I
has
don't
been
know.
A revelation, though.
Yeah, so and I think because his physicality and his size and his threat in the opposition box, as well as, you know, his height defensively, he's an asset, isn't he? I just wonder. I wonder if Rangers would find it difficult, if they could turn a quick coin here, would they do the deal? And it's the same conversation we had a few days ago about Braga at Hearts.
Yeah.
Do Hearts, does someone sit there at Hearts and go, do you know what? If we keep Braga and we get another, you know, big turnout on next season, develops further, we might be able to, what looks like good money now might be double that in a year's time. I wonder if it's a similar situation that Rangers would be in with Fernandez.
Yeah, and if Rangers were to win the league this season and go straight into the Champions League, you know, the finances that come with that, then there wouldn't be that. First of all, there wouldn't be that need to sell in the summer, and also if you're then putting them into a Champions League environment, you know, you could get even more money, even more eyes on them. So it's a tough one for Rangers, tough one for any of the Scottish clubs. You know, they've got a big asset like that, and bids start coming in, offers start coming in. I mean, you would always say, if the club's running properly and recruitment's running properly, as soon as that big offer comes in where you make a healthy profit, you accept it, and the next one comes in, you should have somebody else lined up. Whether that's the case with Rangers and Fernandez at the moment, I'm not sure, because it has been so quick, as you say. But if a serious bid like that comes in, they have a massive decision to make, because he's been brilliant for them. And Rangers fans, I know for a fact Rangers fans are looking at Fernandez and thinking, no, that can I build the team around him, but at 24 years of age, what an asset. He's had this season and getting into next year. He's used to Scottish football. He's got better with every game. Gets better every week when you watch him. He's cutting out he seems to be cutting out the wee mistakes that were maybe in his game at the start of the season. He looks like he's got so much potential and development in him to go and be a really, really top defender. So, as you say, do you cash in now, or do you try and get that value even higher? It's a tough decision.
Good point from Tam. Fernandez and Soapy, John Suter, are the only centre backs that we actually own.
Yeah,
that's a good point, because if Rangers are trying to build something for the longer term, do they really want another total rebuild, defensive rebuild? Because that's what they'd be looking at if they did let him go, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They've got him in a long contract. As I say, only 24. It does feel like he's just at the start. I mean, he's just started his Rangers journey. So for him to leave, it would be a bit of a shock. I just think it would take massive money. For what Danny Rowe and Rangers are what to go and achieve, even the owners as well, in the next few years, it feels like they'll see Fernandez as a massive part of that. And I don't think they would have. They would have expected him to develop and progress and get better. That's why they signed him. That's why they plucked him for kind of relative obscurity at Peterborough. But I'm not sure they would have thought it would happen this quickly. But again, money talks. It's just the size of the fee. But it's interesting because we're talking about him now as a potential £20 million player, Jacko. He's a guy that.
Unit through that number on him, Scott.
Well, you'd need that amount to You think about it, surely.
To make it, yeah.
Surely.
You're right with the add-ons that Peterborough will have had on that, yeah.
But my point is, he was very much a Kevin Thelwell, Dan Purdy signing. No, these guys watched him in an FA Cup tie for Peterborough against Everton, and then kept tabs on him. No, when he signed for Rangers, if you remember, Peterborough fans were laughing. No, they were ridiculing Rangers for taking Fernandez, which I think they look a wee bit silly now, given some of his performances in massive games. So, as I say, it was a signing that raised a lot of eyebrows. People were pretty critical at the start of the season, but I don't think they're laughing now because he's one of the. He's just been named in the team of the year, hasn't he, PFA Scotland, which shows you what his fellow pros think his performances.
Right, just another quick one on Rangers, just because there's a little bit of news floating about, Scott. I've seen today suggestions that youngster Bailey Rice might be moving on in the summer. What's the deal there? Out of contract?
He's out of contract in the summer, Jacko. I'm not really. I must admit. Nah, I think he's a boy. He's obviously that people have been talking about him for years, but he's just never looked like he's going to fulfil that potential. Not at Rangers. Listen, he's had a few chances. I think you could argue maybe deserved more of an opportunity at certain points. Certainly under Philippe Clement, he's had a few injuries as well. But when he's had a chance, has he really went and grabbed it? Has he really went and made that position?
Outstanding.
I don't think he has. Listen, it's interesting. He's obviously been at Rangers a long time. I think everybody knows he was at Motherwell initially with Lennon Miller, and Rangers went and took him. They felt Bailey Rice was the better prospect at that time, but it just shows you, Lennon Miller stays at Motherwell, gets loads of games under his belt, develops, progresses. Look at him now in Serie A and in the Scotland squad, potentially heading to a World Cup. And Bailey Rice just hasn't the game time, troubled by injuries, but hasn't the game time or the opportunity at Rangers to really go and shine. And I think Danny Rowe will know all about him. He'll have a good look at him. And the fact that Rangers aren't kind of breaking their back to try and get Bailey Rice to sign on again kind of tells you that maybe it's time for him to move on.
He's still a young boy, isn't he, Scott? Still only 19 or something, isn't he?
I know. But again, if Danny Rowe and Rangers really thought he was ready to get into that first team and make an impact and contribute, they would have never let the contract run to this point. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, I guess so. I'm a wee bit surprised.
I think it's probably just Jacko. Just on that point quickly, they just a wee story in the record that we've got today. They have agreed a deal for 16-year-old kid Ashton Scally, who along with Kyle Glasgow, and I know these boys are really young at 16, but I know for a fact the club see those two as having a real chance, and they want to create a pathway where these boys really do get an opportunity to progress through the academy and eventually get in the first team. I mean, the boy Scally was taken to Spain last week with Danny Rowe, with the first team squad, which I think tells you how highly rated he is. So I know the people at the club see it as a wee bit of a coup, keeping these boys, because Rangers have lost guys in the past like Billy Gilmer, Boy Wilson that went to Aston Villa as well. So I think it's a good bit of business. I know that sounds daft when it's young boys, but I think the club are really pleased to keep these boys at Ibrox.
All right, Scott. Now, another bit of news just before we came on air. That I found this interesting. This leads us into our chat with this Daily Record Celtic podcast. You see that Andoni Areola has obviously announced, 3 days ago or something, that he was leaving Bournemouth. Bournemouth have now announced today that they've got Marco Rossi coming in. Marco Rose. Now, these are two names that I've seen Celtic fans suggest that they should be all over. I thought the Areola one sounded a bit fanciful because you'd think he's going to be he's going to have a lot of big offers on his table. But Marco Rossi has been kind of a guy who has been available, he has been around.
Yeah.
Obviously, he'll be attracted by the English Premier League. It does sound like the sort of guy that Celtic should have been sitting down and talking to, no?
Probably. I mean, Rangers were linked to him in the past as well, weren't they? In the last week, Rangers have been linked to his name previously as well. Yeah. So, look, he's a highly rated coach. He's worked with all the top boys at Leipzig, your Haalands and Soboslais and people like that.
Jude Bellingham as well, didn't he?
I think with Leipzig, he's came to Glasgow a couple of times and lost into Rangers and Celtic.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, the Leipzig.
But clearly, look, highly rated. You're right, he's been kind of around and available. So if Celtic were that interested, no excuse for them, no speaking to him or no trying to gauge whether he'd be keen on going to Celtic. So it's obviously not happened. Bournemouth, I mean, how slick is that in terms of a club?
That's impressive, isn't it?
Doing what they're doing. I mean, appointing Iraola in the first place. I think I'm right in saying like Rayo Vallecano or something like that before going to Bournemouth. What an appointment he's been. And then, as you say, only days after he announces he's moving on, they've got the next one lined up, another top coach ready to come in. Now, as you say, the Premier League's a big attraction, but just in terms of how a club does its business, so you can see Bournemouth clearly very, very switched on. And I agree with you on Iraola to Celtic. I think he's probably just out of their grasp for me because of the job he's done. I think he'll have multiple offers from Premier League clubs and big clubs, back in Spain and around Europe. I think he's a top manager. I mean, what an appointment he'd be for Celtic if they could go and get him. But like you, I think it's probably a wee bit fanciful at this stage.
Yeah. Well, let's see what our boys Mick and Ryan were thinking about. So, actually, Scott, I believe they're floating the idea, as we said at the top of the show, the notion that the Celtic, after a really troublesome, difficult, arduous season, could be on the cusp of a double.
It looks like Celtic's chance of winning a double this year is like Project Hail Mary. It's like you look at the striking issues, midfield issues, injury issues, fitness issues, dealing with cross-ball issues, all these issues. And yet, can they pull off this Hail Mary and win a double? Is it destined to win a double? Can they do it?
I mean, they can do it. We've spoken about it before, but I think the fixtures are far more favourable for them in the league run-in than they are for Rangers.
Are they going to do it more like not the Castles? Are they going to do it? Are you now? Given that 4-4 lightning in a bottle moment? Are you now on Project Hail Mary and it can happen?
I said in the last podcast, I think Celtic will win the league, and the Scottish Cup against Championship opposition. I know Neil Lennon haven't fired up, but I think they can. I think they should obviously go into that as massive favourites, and it'd be one of the biggest cup upsets of Celtic's history if they were to crash the defeat there, especially Martin Neal's potential last game. But so I think they can do it. I know people probably wonder where that's coming from, but I do. I feel as if they can do it. This Martin Neal factor of just, when you think the game's done and then he continues to just grind out wins. I don't know. I think it might be written in the stars, especially with this grand finale at the end with Lennon via Neil. I don't know. What about yourself?
I mean, like that written in the stars, Project Hail Mary is about going into space. I thought it was quite good to tie it together. I can't see it. I mean, maybe I'm older and more miserable and more Doctor Doom, and I just can't see Celtic win the league this year. I don't think they've got the tools. I think if they did win the league, Rangers and Hearts should just pack it up and get up the road, because they'll never kicking themselves for history if one of them don't win this league, because Celtic are no way equipped. Lost too many games. I just can't see. They don't control games enough. I just don't. And they're going to play against better teams than St Mirren. I just can't see the league. I think the league's going to be a bridge too far. But I think they will win the cup. I think quite a fairly nice send off for Martin Neal to win the cup. And it's probably about as much as they sort of deserve this season. It's been so shambolic. To walk away with a double this year, I think we'd be walking away. They should walk away a wee bit kind of embarrassed with a double this year. given the way it's gone. But listen, fair play, they're still in there fighting. But I just don't. I think the too many sins of the past will catch up with them in the league.
I think it would be the most remarkable title win in the club's history for to do it. I mean, 8 league defeats. I don't think any team's won a championship with 8
not 8 defeats when they won it in '98. No,
that was a wee bit before my time. So you might since definitely in the last 25 years.
Rangers were kind of stumbling towards 10. They were losing games, and so were Celtic. It wasn't a vintage campaign in terms of wins and losses, but people remember it. People forget that you forget the defeats once it's over the line. So I think over the line it'll be remembered as a remarkable season under O'Neill. I just think I think Rangers and Hearts going at it. I think Falkirk. We'll get to Falkirk towards the end of the pod as well. But the game at the weekend, they'll be tools away now as well. Remains to be seen what happens with Hibs. I just think the big games against Rangers and Hearts, I think, even though it's at Parkhead, I think they're tough. I just think Celtic, the vulnerability there, but they've got resilience. They have got spirit and resilience. What they lack in a lot of areas, they have got in desire and determination. Whether that's going to be enough, I'm not entirely convinced.
I'll just quickly say, I think the reason I think Celtic have got a real chance of winning this league is because you look at it, Hearts are still to go to Hibs, so there's potential to drop points there.
Yeah,
Rangers and Hearts meet at Tynecastle before Celtic and Rangers meet the following weekend. So Celtic could potentially go into that game against Rangers top of the league. And if they're top of the league and they win that, then they're going to be the momentum swings in their favour again. They're going to go favourites. So I think the next few weeks it's dynamite. We can't wait for it. It's what we've all been crying out for years, a proper title fight. And not only do we have a 2-horse race, we'll get 3. So I just think I've got a feeling that Celtic are going to go into that game against Rangers top of the league, and if they can win that, then I think they're going to be on course for it.
It's going to be bonkers, and we can't predict anything, that's for sure. What I wanted to get to discuss as well, I mean, obviously the kind of off the field stuff's been parked a wee bit just now with the focus on the trophies. But it was interesting in the last week, the kind of Willie Hockey Lord Hockey coming back out again with his season ticket alliance trust ideas. And he's brought in Paul McStay as the ambassador for this, which is interesting. I mean, Paul's not a guy who's been in the limelight for years, and I've spoken to him a few times over the years, and he's a pretty quiet, almost kind of shy guy. For somebody who's a complete utter legend of the club. He's not a particularly vocal kind of guy. So it's interesting him putting his head over the parapet and backing this. Especially how it could be seen as a kind of move against the current board a wee bit. I don't think it is that. I think that's maybe why some punters are kind of not quite getting too excited, because the ambition is to get 56,000 season ticket holders to sign up for this, and Lord Hockey will put in his 2 million per 10,000 and get 10 million shares, which might get them 5 or 6%, which could get somebody representative from the support on the board, which is, I think, would be a positive for everyone concerned, but it's probably not enough for the ones with the pitchforks and wanting wide scale changes and wanting a change of regime. They want Dermot Desmond to go and all these things. So for this, it doesn't sound ambitious enough for them. It sounds good, sounds pretty solid to me. But are you surprised about Paul kind of getting involved, or think he can make an impact on this? Does that legitimise this? Will it help it get up and running? How do you see this kind of Willie Hockey led movement unfolding?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I look at it, Celtic fans have been crying out for a voice at boardroom level for years, and I think this could be a genuine way in. You know, I think they've been campaigning the Celtic fans collective for a fan advisory board as well. I just think there's been so much anger and discontent this season. It's very much, you kind of touched on it there, it's a very much like kind of us v them mentality between the fans and the hierarchy. You know, it's been a club that's been engulfed in a civil war for the last 12 months. You know, one extreme stands to the other. For me, it's very much a broken club at the minute in terms of the disharmony. I've never seen disharmony like it in all my years kind of covering Celtic. So, you know, I think the big thing for me, the season ticket renewal campaign is due to launch any day now. You know, and I suspect, my major suspicion is that I think Celtic will announce their plans for restructuring. You know, I think in the background they've been working on it. Brian Wilson's kind of alluded to it in his previous statements and Celtic TV interviews that there will be a kind of major statement forthcoming, and I think that will tie in with the season ticket renewals coming out, because we all know how important that season tickets are to Celtic. They pretty much, that is the lifeblood of Celtic, is the fans, and the season ticket money that comes in. It's tens of millions of pounds. So I know that obviously there's a Celtic fans collective are campaigning for, until the final day. They're asking fans to delay renewing and to send a message to the board as they campaign for restructuring. Tom Allison, he's been on the board for decades, and I know he's just recently retired. That was announced last year. So I think that's I think that's a signal of things to come. And just on the season ticket alliance, I think it's 54,000 season ticket holders Celtic have got. So if you get 54,000 fans behind that alliance, and like you say, Willie Hockey's pumping in 2 million for every 10,000. That's potential for £10 million being converted into shares. And if the fans are being signed out for a voice in the boardroom, then that's the way to do it. And Willie Hockey, he's such, we all know who Willie Hockey is. He's a lifelong fan, multi-millionaire, hugely successful businessman, hugely respected. And I think we talk about Paul McStay as well. We have a legendary figure like Paul McStay, who's the poster boy for the campaign, and I think it does carry. I think it could work. I think it does add a bit of legitimacy to the campaign. And you need to remember as well, the Celtic season ticket holders aren't actually been asked to put any money in either. It's Willie Hockey's putting all the money in. They just need to sign up and back it. So I think it's a well thought out campaign. I don't think it is anti-board. I think it's just about getting a fan representation onto the board. And I think for me, Celtic are a real crucial period in the club's history at the minute. I think this summer could decide or shape the trajectory this club's going to go in over the next 5 years. And I think everybody will probably agree that Celtic and Dyer need a modernisation from top to bottom. I think that's abundantly clear. And they need representation from the fans, the lifeblood, to help really play a part in that and build a modern club for the future that fans can be proud of and actually see Celtic reach their potential. Not just domestically, we all know they've dominated domestically, but in Europe, that's where they've really come up short. And I think if we're going to restore unity, I think this is the first step in doing so. And I think it's a campaign that could work.
Ryan's gone early there, Scotty. He's convinced it's a Celtic double. What's your thoughts?
Certainly is. I tend to agree with Mick, Jacko, if I'm honest. I think they'll win the Scottish Cup. I think Tavernier will get that send-off. Much as Neil Lennon and Fairman will give them a right good game, but I'd expect Celtic to have too much for a championship side. In terms of the league, though, I must admit, it's so hard to call. Many times you ask me about it every week, that Daily Record jury, and I've been sitting on the fence for so long.
Here's a question then from someone that's not me. Scotland the Brave says, does Scott honestly believe this Rangers side, who are serial bottlers, will beat Celtic to the league?
I think at the moment Rangers have got a better chance, just in terms of how they're playing. But flip side of that is, I think Ryan mentioned it there, I think if you look at the fixtures, they probably do favour Celtic a bit, just how the fixtures have fallen. With them having what he says, their hardest games against Hearts and Rangers at Celtic Park. It's so tight, but I can only go, Jacko, and what I've watched for Celtic just in the last few weeks and months. I don't know if they're quite at it. No, I know they scored 6 at the weekend. Bizarre circumstances.
It's another game where they kind of played in fits and starts, isn't it? That seems to be the problem. Getting a 90-minute performance out of this Celtic side seems to be a trouble even for Martin O'Neill.
Aye, that second half performance on Sunday would still be a worry. And listen, I said on the show on Sunday, I think Ian Acho is absolutely crucial to them because he's the best striker they've got. So listen, if they keep him fit for the 5 games and he can start and he's on fire, he could blast the link. Aye, but if they're relying on Svanchara and Tuneke and others I'm not convinced. I think they might just come up a wee bit short.
There's Peter Ferguson there. He says, if I had wee Ryan's confidence, I'd still be going up to dancing in my 50s. Right, listen, we're running out of time here, Scott, but I think, I wanted to touch on, obviously, we've got a few days to go until the weekend, but you can't take your eye off some of the fixtures that are coming up already. At both ends of the table, obviously, we all know about the race at the top, and how tight that is, and how everybody's going to watch every ball kicked there to see how it shapes up, particularly with the Edinburgh Derby. But we'll come to that later in the week. The one thing that I probably did want to highlight would be I just can't take my eyes off Aberdeen versus Kilmarnock, and what a massive match that could be at Pittodrie.
It's huge. I think Aberdeen did themselves a massive favour last week by beating Hibs at Pittodrie. I mean, that was absolutely crucial for Stephen Robinson to get that first win. And I just think,
I don't know if they're out the woods though, Scott.
They're not out the woods, but I just think that will give him a massive lift, Jacko. And I know it was against 10 men, Hibs, losing a man early doors, but just getting that victory, the first win at home. There was a big crowd for that Hibs game. I expect it'll be the same at the weekend. I've liked what Stevie Robinson said since then. I mean, he's taken nothing for granted, but you can see that he's trying, even this early in his Aberdeen tenure, he's trying to forge a kind of spirit there, a togetherness about them, a bit like he had at St Mirren. I definitely feel that's been lacking at Aberdeen recently, certainly towards the end of Jimmy Tilline's time there. So even the short term, if you can just foster a wee bit of that, I think they'll have enough to make sure they're not involved in that relegation playoff. And look, as much as I think Kelly will give them a decent game with a home crowd behind them, with a lift for that Hibs victory, I think Aberdeen will win it and basically kind of get themselves safe, and it'll be up to the others beneath them to keep fighting it out.
I don't know, Scotty. I know we're having to go early on this one as well now, but I've just got a feeling for Kilmarnock. I think Kilmarnock are going to go up there, and then if they can win that game, I think they move to just a couple of points behind Aberdeen. I think all bets are off at that point. I think that it could become a real harem-scarum towards the climax down at the bottom end of the table. But anyway, Scott, listen, I'll let you go and get your dinner. Thanks for everybody's comments. Sorry, I'm not brilliant reading them all out. So I'm trying to do 5 things at once. But hopefully, Daniel Coll will be back at his work tomorrow. And we should be on air from 6 o'clock as usual at normal time. As I said, with our pals from NordVPN. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks, Scotty.
Cheers, Jacko.